A dream in flight. The day that changed everything. On a bright spring afternoon at LaGuardia International Airport, the bustling hum of conversations, rolling suitcases, and boarding announcements created a familiar chaos. Travelers hurried through terminals, some chasing tight connections, others leisurely strolling to their gates. Among the waves of passengers stood Marcus Fields, a 14-year-old with a shy but determined demeanor. Today wasn't just another day. It was the day that could change his future. Marcus clutched his worn black chessboard case to his chest. Inside was his most prized possession, the same board he had practiced on for years, each square holding memories of wins, losses, and strategies honed to near perfection. His curly black hair framed his face, his eyes sharp with both focus and apprehension. It was his first time flying alone, a journey to Chicago for the National Youth Chess Championship. It wasn't just a game for Marcus. Winning this tournament could earn him a full college scholarship, lifting a financial burden that weighed heavily on his family. "You've got this, Marcus," he whispered to himself, taking a steadying breath. As he approached gate C12, his nerves eased slightly. His mother, a tireless nurse, had hugged him tightly before the trip, her words a mix of encouragement and pride. "This is your chance, baby. Go show them what you can do. You're a fighter." He smiled at the thought of her. Marcus boarded the plane early, settling into seat 12A, a window seat he had specifically requested. He loved gazing out at the clouds, letting his mind clear before matches. Pulling out his notebook, Marcus began flipping through pages of strategies, combinations of moves, and favorite openings like the Sicilian defense and Queen's Gambit. The hum of boarding passengers faded into the background as he sank into deep concentration. The flight attendant. The flight had only been boarding for 15 minutes when Clara Thompson, a senior flight attendant, made her way down the aisle. Tall, with meticulously styled blonde hair and an unyielding expression, Clara prided herself on her authority in the cabin. She had worked this job for over 20 years, and though many passengers adored her efficiency, others had whispered about her sharp demeanor and occasionally judgmental behavior. From the moment Marcus boarded, Clara had noticed him. A black teenager traveling alone, sitting quietly with a chessboard. It was enough to pique her skepticism. She didn't like kids causing trouble, even if there was no trouble yet to be found. As passengers finished boarding, Clara turned to survey the cabin once more. That's when she noticed Marcus had moved his chessboard and papers onto the empty seat next to him -12B. Her eyes narrowed. She marched toward the boy. "Excuse me," Clara said curtly, her voice crisp enough to make Marcus's head snap up. "That seat isn't for you." Marcus blinked, confused. I'm sorry, ma'am. I just needed a bit more space to study my notes. I'll move them if someone comes." "That seat isn't for you," she repeated firmly, her tone sharper this time. Several passengers glanced up at the exchange. Marcus's face reddened. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I'll move it right now." Clara gave a small huff, as if victorious, and turned sharply on her heel. Marcus sighed, pushing his notebook and board back into his bag. He couldn't understand why the woman had been so harsh, but he brushed it off. He didn't want to make a scene. The accusation. The plane doors had just been sealed when Clara returned, this time with a cold stare that sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. "You need to get off the plane," she said flatly, her words dropping like a hammer. Marcus's heart stopped. "What?" he asked, stunned. "Why? I didn't do anything wrong. You're being disruptive, and we cannot allow you to stay on board. Gather your belongings." Disruptive, Marcus thought. He had barely spoken a word to anyone. He hadn't moved, hadn't even taken up the extra seat anymore. Panic began to bubble in his chest. The cabin grew quiet as passengers looked toward them. "I don't understand," Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly. "I wasn't causing any trouble." Clara's voice grew louder, enough to draw more eyes. "You can leave on your own, or I'll have someone escort you." Marcus's hands trembled as he clutched his bag. "But I didn't do anything." Clara folded her arms. "That's enough. Get up now." A passenger, an older man sitting 2 rows back, cleared his throat loudly. "What did the kid even do?" he asked, his tone skeptical. Clara shot him a look. "Sir, this is about safety protocols." Marcus felt his cheeks burn as all eyes in the cabin focused on him. Slowly, with his head hung low and his heart pounding, he stood up, pulling his bag onto his shoulder and clutching his chessboard tightly. He began the humiliating walk back up the aisle. Whispers followed him. Did he do something? Poor kid. That's so unnecessary. At the front of the cabin, Marcus glanced back one last time. Clara stood tall, her expression unreadable, as if she had already forgotten him. Marcus swallowed the lump in his throat and stepped back into the jet bridge, his vision blurring with tears of anger and shame. Sitting alone, Marcus found himself back in the terminal, slumping onto a chair with his bag at his feet. His pulse raced in his ears as he replayed the events over and over in his mind. Why did she do that? What did I do wrong? He asked himself. Around him, travelers bustled by, oblivious to the injustice that had just occurred. He watched planes take off outside the window, each one a reminder that his own flight, his dream, was slipping away. Marcus closed his eyes and gripped the handle of his chessboard tightly, fighting the urge to break down. But something stronger stirred inside him. This isn't fair. This isn't right, he thought, his anger sharpening into resolve. He pulled his phone out of his pocket, his hand still shaking. Logging onto Twitter, he began typing. Today I was kicked off a plane for absolutely no reason. I was quietly studying for my chess tournament when a flight attendant accused me of being disruptive and forced me to leave. I'm 14, I was alone, and I did nothing wrong. This isn't about safety. This is about me being black. #justice for Marcus. He stared at the words for a long moment before pressing send. At first, nothing happened. Marcus refreshed his feed over and over, his thumb shaking against the screen. Then, within minutes, his phone buzzed. A like. Then another. A retweet. A comment. His story was beginning to spread. And little did Marcus know, this was just the beginning. The voice of justice. The ripple begins. Marcus sat hunched over in the terminal, staring at his phone as the screen lit up with a flood of notifications. The dull roar of travelers around him was drowned out by the rapid buzzing. Retweets, comments, and likes poured in faster than he could keep up. This is unacceptable. #justice for Marcus. A 14-year-old kid gets kicked off for no reason. Shame on that airline. Discrimination has no place here. This young man deserves better. Each comment added to the storm of emotions swirling inside Marcus. Confusion, embarrassment, anger, but also, slowly, hope. People were listening. People cared. Strangers who didn't even know his name an hour ago now rallied behind him. He glanced at the clock on the terminal wall. It had only been 12 minutes since he'd been removed from the plane, but the situation was already spiraling into something much larger. "Excuse me." A soft voice broke through Marcus's thoughts. He looked up to see a young woman standing nearby. She was holding a phone in one hand and adjusting her glasses with the other. Her backpack hung loosely over one shoulder, and she wore a concerned expression. "I saw what happened," she said gently. "I was sitting 3 rows back. That flight attendant, she didn't even have a reason to ask you to leave. I recorded it." Marcus blinked. "You recorded it?" She nodded, pulling up her phone and showing a video. The grainy footage revealed the uncomfortable exchange. Marcus quietly asking for space, Clara's sharp tone, and the humiliating scene of Marcus being forced to leave the plane while passengers watched in silent disbelief. "I couldn't just sit there and do nothing," she said, her voice firm. "People need to see this." Marcus nodded slowly. The video was undeniable proof. The woman, whose name he learned was Jasmine, uploaded it to Twitter with Marcus's hashtag, adding her own caption. "This kid was kicked off our flight for no reason. I saw it happen. He was quiet, respectful, and just studying. This is wrong. Hashtag justice for Marcus." Within seconds, the video began spreading like wildfire. The storm spreads. Back on board the plane, passengers were restless. Whispers had turned into audible questions. Phones lit up across the cabin as Marcus's tweet and Jasmine's video reached the people still seated. An older woman sitting in the first row leaned toward a flight attendant passing by. "Why was that young boy removed? He wasn't doing anything wrong." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can't discuss passenger matters," the attendant replied stiffly. "Well, it doesn't look right to me," she muttered. The tension in the cabin was palpable. Passengers who had been skeptical of Marcus's removal now began murmuring louder, showing each other the video circulating online. Marcus's quiet exit now carried a spotlight the airline hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, Clara stood near the front, her jaw tightening as she overheard snippets of conversations. "Poor kid didn't deserve that. This is going viral. Look at the hashtags. They're going to have to explain this." Clara's cool confidence began to crack. She shot a glance toward the cabin door, as if expecting someone to come back for her at any moment. She had been in tough situations before, but this was different. This was public, and it was growing bigger than she could control. A call for action. Back in the terminal, Marcus couldn't believe how fast the events were unfolding. His phone now vibrated nonstop as his story caught the attention of more people. Students, parents, activists, even teachers who tweeted messages of support. "I teach kids like Marcus every day. No child should face humiliation like this. Stay strong, Marcus. I'm a chess coach, and I know the pressure of tournaments." The fact that Marcus stayed so calm says everything. He deserves our respect. The messages filled Marcus with both relief and surprise. He had always been the quiet kid, the one who sat at the back of the classroom, listening more than speaking. Now his voice, his story, was louder than ever. And then it happened. His phone buzzed with a notification that made him freeze. At Eli Roberts' official retweeted your post. Eli Roberts, famous actor, activist, and philanthropist with over 10 million followers, had shared Marcus's story. His caption read, "Injustice doesn't care about age. Marcus, we've got your back. Hashtag justice for Marcus." Within minutes, the hashtag exploded into the #1 trending topic in the country. The airline reacts. At the airline's operations center, alarms were already blaring. The social media team scrambled to contain the firestorm as Marcus's story gained national traction. Screens displayed the growing wave of tweets, comments, and now major news outlets picking up the video. A headline scrolled across one monitor. 14-year-old chess prodigy forced off plane without cause. Public outrage builds. A manager stormed into the control room, his voice sharp. "Who authorized removing that kid? Why wasn't this handled quietly?" No one had answers. As the story grew, a public relations representative hurried through the terminal toward Marcus, her heels clicking against the tile floor. Marcus looked up as the woman approached, her smile strained. "Mr. Fields," she said carefully, kneeling slightly to meet his eye level. "We want to deeply apologize for what happened today. There was a misunderstanding, and we would like to correct it immediately." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Correct it how?" "We'd like to rebook you on the next available flight to Chicago, in first class, with all expenses covered," she said smoothly. "We'll also provide you with a travel voucher for future flights." Marcus stared at her, his fists clenching slightly. The offer was tempting, first class. A free voucher, but it wasn't enough. He could feel the weight of all the voices that now stood behind him, people who knew this wasn't just a mistake, but an act of injustice. "This isn't just about me getting to Chicago," Marcus replied, his voice steadier than he expected. "That flight attendant humiliated me in front of everyone. She didn't even have a reason. The PR representative faltered, as if unprepared for Marcus's calm resistance. "We understand that, and we're taking the incident seriously. I want a public apology," Marcus said firmly. "From the airline, not just to me, but to everyone who's faced what I did." The woman hesitated, her professional facade flickering. She glanced at her phone, where notifications from Marcus's hashtag continued to flood in. It was clear that the airline's reputation was at stake, and the boy before her wasn't backing down. "Let me talk to my team," she said finally. Marcus's moment. As Marcus watched the woman walk away, Jasmine sat down beside him, offering a small smile. "You really told her off," she said, nudging his arm playfully. "Good for you." Marcus exhaled, his chest finally loosening. I don't want anyone else to feel like this." "You're doing more than that," Jasmine replied. "You're showing people how to stand up." Outside the terminal windows, planes continued to take off into the bright blue sky, but Marcus's mind was set on something greater. He knew his tournament in Chicago was waiting, and he would get there eventually. But right now, he was fighting a different battle. A bigger one. A battle for his dignity. For justice. And the world was watching. Rising from the shadows. The eyes of the nation. As Marcus sat in the terminal with Jasmine at his side, he watched his phone screen glow brighter by the second. Notifications poured in. Hundreds. Then thousands. Each one amplifying his story. Tweets. Retweets, supportive messages, and now even major news outlets had caught wind of the incident. Marcus's post had grown into something he never imagined. #JusticeForMarcus had become a rallying cry not just for him, but for countless others who had felt unheard or mistreated. Parents shared stories about their children, professionals spoke out against discrimination, and people from all walks of life united around one teenager's moment of courage. Suddenly, Marcus's phone buzzed with an unfamiliar call. He hesitated for a moment, staring at the unknown number before answering. "Hello." "Hi, Marcus. This is Maria Sanchez with Channel 5 News. First off, let me say we're so sorry for what you've been through. I'm reaching out because the nation is behind you, and we'd love to give you a platform to share your story. Would you be willing to go live with us for a short interview?" Marcus's heart skipped a beat. Live on the news. Him. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. He was the kid who blended into the background, who sat at the chessboard, quietly thinking moves ahead. I don't know," he said hesitantly. Jasmine nudged him, whispering, "This is your chance. Tell them what happened. Let the world hear you." Marcus took a deep breath, gripping his phone tighter. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it. A public reckoning." Less than an hour later, Marcus sat nervously in a quiet room set up by the airport staff. A small camera crew had arrived from Channel 5 News, their equipment snapping into place. Jasmine sat across from him, giving him an encouraging thumbs up. The crew mic'd Marcus up and positioned him in a chair in front of a backdrop of the busy terminal. The lead reporter, Maria Sanchez, smiled warmly as she crouched to meet his gaze. "You're very brave, Marcus," she said gently. "Just speak from the heart." Marcus nodded. When the cameras went live, the nerves still swirled in his stomach, but he remembered his mother's words. "You're a fighter." "Good afternoon, everyone," Maria began, facing the camera. "We're here with 14-year-old Marcus Fields, a gifted chess player who was unjustly removed from his flight earlier today. His story has sparked a national conversation about discrimination and justice. Marcus, thank you for being here." Marcus swallowed hard but straightened his back. "Thank you for having me." "Marcus, can you tell us what happened on the plane?" Marcus recounted the events calmly and clearly, his voice steady despite the emotions threatening to bubble up. He described how he'd asked for space to study, how the flight attendant dismissed him, and how, without reason, he was asked to leave the plane. As he spoke, he noticed Maria's kind expression falter, replaced by something closer to anger and disbelief. "What was going through your mind when this happened?" she asked softly. "I felt embarrassed," Marcus admitted. "It was like everyone thought I did something wrong when I didn't. I didn't want to cause any problems. I just wanted to study for my chess tournament. I've worked so hard for this chance, but when she made me leave, I felt small." Marcus paused, his gaze falling for a moment before he looked back into the camera, determination lighting his eyes. "But I realized something. I couldn't let this happen without speaking up. It's not just about me. It's about anyone who's been treated unfairly just because of how they look. People need to know it's not okay." Maria nodded, her voice resolute as she turned back to the camera. Marcus Fields' story is a powerful reminder of the importance of speaking up in the face of injustice. Marcus, thank you for your courage today. National impact. The broadcast spread like wildfire. Within minutes of airing, Marcus's quiet words reverberated across the country. News networks replayed clips of the interview, celebrities voiced their support, and communities rallied around the teenager who had turned a moment of humiliation into a powerful stand for justice. The trending hashtag #JusticeForMarcus, was now joined by another, #LetHimPlayChess. The new movement focused on making sure Marcus reached Chicago in time for his chess tournament, a goal the nation now seemed determined to achieve. That night, across social media, a professional chess club offered to sponsor Marcus's travel permanently. A major airline competitor tweeted, "Marcus Fields, we'd love to get you to Chicago. Let us know." #LetHimPlayChess. Parents, teachers, and community leaders began organizing rallies, posting signs, and sharing Marcus's story far and wide. Meanwhile, the airline responsible for the incident remained eerily silent. Public pressure mounted, and news anchors speculated on when, or if, they would publicly address what had happened. The flight attendant faces scrutiny. While Marcus's story spread, Clara Thompson, still aboard the plane, now mid-flight, was unaware of the full storm brewing outside. It wasn't until the captain summoned her to the cockpit mid-flight that she began to grasp the severity of the situation. "Clara, what exactly happened with the boy you removed earlier?" the captain asked, his tone sharp but professional. Clara stiffened, her mask of authority slipping. "He was disruptive, sir. I followed protocol." "Disruptive how?" Clara faltered, her mind scrambling for justification. "He was using another seat without permission." The captain's eyes narrowed. "Passengers have been showing me this." He turned a tablet toward her. On the screen played Jasmine's video, now circulating online. The footage painted a different picture, Marcus sitting quietly, Clara's voice sharp and unprovoked. A wave of unease rippled through Clara. "Passengers are upset," the captain said sternly. "And this isn't going away." An unlikely hero. Back at the terminal, Marcus sat slouched in his chair, exhaustion creeping over him. He hadn't eaten all day, and his head ached from all the attention. Jasmine handed him a bottle of water, offering a small smile. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I think so," Marcus replied, though he felt like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Just then, an airline representative rushed toward him, this time with a look of both urgency and sincerity. "Marcus, we're ready to rebook you immediately. Your flight leaves in 1 hour, and you'll arrive in Chicago tonight." Marcus blinked, surprised. "Really?" "Yes," the representative said quickly. "And we're deeply sorry for what happened to you." Marcus exhaled slowly. It wasn't perfect. He still wanted accountability, a real apology. But the first step had been taken. As the representative left, Jasmine nudged him. "You're going to make that tournament, Marcus. And you're going to win." Marcus smiled faintly, clutching his chessboard case tighter. "I hope so." The journey to redemption. Taking flight once more. Marcus's chest rose and fell steadily as he boarded the new flight to Chicago. The first steps back onto the plane felt surreal, like crossing a line between humiliation and redemption. Unlike his earlier departure, this time the atmosphere buzzed with quiet support. Flight attendants greeted him with warm smiles, and the captain himself paused to shake Marcus's hand before the boy entered the cabin. "Welcome aboard, Marcus," the captain said with a reassuring nod. "We're going to get you to Chicago on time." The words settled something inside Marcus. As he slid into his seat -12A again, his favorite spot by the window, he exhaled deeply. No longer surrounded by accusatory whispers, the boy could finally look out at the horizon with something close to peace. He clutched his chessboard case, rubbing the edge of the well-worn leather with his thumb. Beside him sat an older man with silver hair and round glasses. He leaned slightly toward Marcus. "You're Marcus Fields, aren't you? The young chess prodigy." Marcus glanced at him, unsure, and nodded quietly. "I saw the news." The man continued, his voice gentle. "What happened to you was wrong, young man. But the way you handled yourself, calm, determined, that's real strength." "Thank you," Marcus said softly, surprised by the kindness. The man smiled, a twinkle of admiration in his eyes. "Remember, chess and life are alike. It's not always about the pieces you're given, but how you play the board." Marcus thought about that as the engines roared to life, carrying him toward Chicago. The weight of what had happened still pressed on him, but he held on to his resolve. This wasn't just about the tournament anymore. It was about something bigger, proving to himself, to the world, that he would not be defined by what happened. A hero's welcome. The sun was setting as Marcus's plane touched down at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. He expected the terminal to be quiet, just another stop in the massive, bustling airport. But what awaited him made his steps falter. As Marcus stepped off the jet bridge with his bag slung over his shoulder, a cheer erupted. Dozens of people stood in the terminal, holding up signs. #Let them play chess. Justice for Marcus. We're with you. Reporters flanked the edges of the crowd, cameras flashing and microphones ready, while chess enthusiasts and supporters clapped and shouted words of encouragement. Marcus blinked in surprise as his name echoed across the terminal. "There he is," someone shouted. "That's him." Marcus's heart raced. He wasn't used to this attention, this celebration. He tightened his grip on his chessboard, stepping forward hesitantly as people made way for him. A woman approached, holding out her hand with a warm smile. She was tall and confident, her dark suit crisp and tailored. "Marcus Fields. I'm Elaine Harper, president of the National Chess Federation. It's an honor to meet you." Marcus shook her hand, still processing everything. "Thank you. We heard about what you went through," Elaine said sincerely. "Your courage and composure have inspired thousands of people, not just chess players, but everyone. You've reminded us what it means to stand up for what's right. We're all rooting for you this weekend." Marcus felt a lump in his throat as the crowd applauded again. Jasmine, who had traveled with him to make sure he arrived safely, stepped up and nudged him. "Smile, Marcus. You've earned this." For the first time since the ordeal began, Marcus allowed himself a small, shy grin. Focus and fire. That night, Marcus checked into the tournament's hotel, a grand building with marble floors and massive chandeliers. He was given a room on the 12th floor. Fitting, he thought, given his preference for seat 12A, and immediately dropped his bag on the bed. The familiar weight of exhaustion returned. The day had been a roller coaster, filled with emotions he could barely process. He wanted to collapse into sleep, but the tournament was tomorrow. This was the moment he had been preparing for all year. He couldn't let distractions cloud his focus. Marcus sat at the small desk by the window, unpacking his chessboard and opening his notebook. His mother's words echoed in his mind. "You're a fighter." He studied late into the night, working through opening strategies and endgame scenarios. The patterns on the board calmed him, like old friends offering quiet guidance. The chaos of the day faded away, replaced by the familiar rhythm of his moves, calculated, deliberate, and strong. The tournament begins, The next morning, the hotel ballroom buzzed with excitement. Rows of tables, each adorned with pristine chessboards and timers, stretched across the massive room. Young players, some with fierce expressions, others whispering nervously to their parents, filled the space. Parents, coaches, and judges hovered nearby, their voices a hum of background noise. Marcus took his seat at board 7, his name displayed on a small placard beside his opponent's. His hands trembled slightly as he set up his chess pieces. He had faced tough opponents before, but the weight of the previous day still lingered. His first-round opponent, a boy with sharp eyes and slicked back hair, glanced at him and smirked. "You're that kid from the news, huh? Think all that attention makes you special?" Marcus looked up sharply, meeting his opponent's gaze. For a moment, he felt the same humiliation that had burned him on the plane. But this time, he wouldn't let it rattle him. "No," Marcus said calmly, his voice firm. "My game makes me special." The other boy raised an eyebrow, but said nothing more. The tournament director's voice boomed across the room. "Round 1 begins. Players, make your first move." Marcus inhaled deeply, his fingers grazing the smooth pawn in front of him. His focus narrowed to the board, to the familiar 64 squares that held no judgment, no bias, just strategy and skill. More than a game. Marcus played with precision and poise, moving through the first rounds with confidence. His concentration was unshakable, his moves deliberate. As the rounds progressed, whispers about his performance spread through the crowd. "That's Marcus Fields. He's beating kids 2 years older than him. Did you see that endgame? He's incredible." One by one, Marcus's opponents fell. The tournament buzzed with tension as he advanced through the brackets, his determination unwavering. Each victory felt like a piece of the broken day before snapping back into place. In the final round, as Marcus sat across from the last challenger, he felt the crowd's energy behind him. This wasn't just about winning a championship anymore. It was about proving that nothing could break him. The timer ticked down, the pieces clacked, and after a grueling mash, Marcus saw it, a pathway to checkmate. His opponent hadn't noticed the trap. He moved his queen into position and pressed the clock. Checkmate. A hush fell over the room for a split second, and then the crowd erupted. Marcus looked up in disbelief as the judge approached and raised his hand in victory. A champion rises. The award ceremony felt like a dream. Marcus stood on the podium, the gold trophy clutched tightly in his hands as cameras flashed, and people cheered. Elaine Harper approached him with a microphone. "Marcus Fields, you've won this championship with skill, grace, and unshakable focus. What do you want to say to the world?" Marcus looked out over the crowd, thinking of everything he'd been through, of the humiliation, the injustice, and the way people had rallied behind him. He held the microphone close. "I learned this weekend that life is a lot like chess. Sometimes people don't play fair. Sometimes the odds are against you. But you have to think ahead, believe in yourself, and keep moving forward. This win isn't just for me. It's for everyone who's ever felt overlooked. Keep fighting. Your voice matters." The crowd erupted in applause. In that moment, Marcus realized that this wasn't just his victory. It was their victory, and he had played the game of his life. A reckoning in the spotlight. The morning after the win, Marcus awoke the next morning to the golden glow of sunlight streaming through his hotel window. The weight of exhaustion from the tournament had pulled him into the deepest sleep he'd had in weeks, but now he stirred, blinking at the ceiling as memories from the day before washed over him. He had won. The championship trophy sat proudly on the desk across the room, reflecting the morning light. Marcus sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. For a moment, he allowed himself to simply feel relief, pride, and awe at how far he had come. But as he reached for his phone, the world outside his hotel room came rushing back. His notifications were out of control. Dozens of missed calls and texts from unknown numbers flooded the screen. Media outlets, reporters, chess clubs, and people all over the country who had seen his journey unfold. His Twitter feed was ablaze with congratulatory messages. From humiliation to triumph, Marcus Fields is a true champion. This kid deserves everything good coming his way. #Justice for Marcus. Congratulations on winning, Marcus. You're an inspiration to all of us. Marcus's chest swelled as he scrolled through the outpouring of support, but beneath the praise, there was still one unresolved piece of the puzzle: the airline. He hadn't forgotten the flight attendant. He hadn't forgotten the way her sharp words made him feel small, as if he didn't belong. And now the nation hadn't forgotten either. Calls for accountability were growing louder by the hour, and the airline could no longer remain silent. The airline's statement. Across the country, the airline's corporate offices were in full crisis mode. Screens in their headquarters displayed news channels covering Marcus's tournament victory, while social media dashboards reflected the mounting fury of the public. The hashtag hold them accountable had begun trending alongside #Justice for Marcus. An emergency press conference was scheduled for the afternoon. In a sleek conference room lined with microphones and cameras, the airline's CEO, David Lockwood, stood at the podium. His expression was serious, his usually smooth demeanor betrayed by a flicker of discomfort. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steady. "Over the past few days, we have witnessed a situation that should never have occurred. On behalf of the airline, I want to extend my deepest and most sincere apology to Marcus Fields and his family." Reporters leaned forward, cameras clicking. "This incident was a clear failure on our part to uphold the values of respect and equality that we claim to stand for," Lockwood continued. "The flight attendant involved in the incident has been placed on indefinite suspension pending a full investigation. We are also launching a company-wide retraining program on bias and inclusion to ensure this does not happen again." He paused, as if carefully choosing his next words. "Marcus Fields is an extraordinary young man. The courage and grace he has shown throughout this ordeal are inspiring, and we will be working directly with him and his family to make this right." A reporter raised their hand. "Will there be compensation for Marcus?" Lockwood nodded. "Yes. We have offered Marcus full sponsorship for his future chess tournaments, including travel and accommodations. Additionally, we will be donating $100,000 to youth chess programs across the country in Marcus's honor." The room buzzed with murmurs, but the message was clear. The airline had been backed into a corner, and Marcus's voice had been heard. Marcus responds. Back in his hotel room, Marcus watched the press conference live. Jasmine sat next to him, her knees pulled up onto the couch as they both listened in silence. When it ended, she turned to Marcus, her eyes wide. "They're offering you sponsorship. That's huge." Marcus stared at the screen, his expression thoughtful. "It's more than I expected. But are you okay with it?" Jasmine pressed. Marcus leaned back, his mind spinning. Part of him felt relief. This was a step in the right direction, proof that speaking out mattered. But another part of him bristled at the way the airline tried to patch things up with money and promises. "It's a start," he said finally, "but I'm not doing this for the sponsorship. I want them to actually learn something. I don't want another kid to go through what I did." Jasmine nodded. "Then let's make sure they do." Later that evening, Marcus released his own statement on Twitter. "Thank you to everyone who supported me. Winning the tournament was a dream come true, but this fight isn't just about me. It's about fairness, respect, and equality. I appreciate the airline taking responsibility, but actions speak louder than words. I hope this moment inspires real change, not just for me, but for everyone. #Justice for Marcus, #keep fighting. The post quickly gained traction, with people praising Marcus's maturity and leadership. He wasn't just a young chess champion anymore. He had become a symbol of resilience and integrity. An unexpected invitation. 2 days later, as Marcus and his mother prepared to head back home, his phone buzzed with a call from an unfamiliar number. "Hello. Is this Marcus Fields?" a woman's polished voice asked. "Yes, Mom. This is Dr. Evelyn Wright, the president of Westbridge University. We saw your story, and I must say, we're deeply moved by both your chess skills and your poise in standing up for justice. West Ridge values students like you, leaders who aren't afraid to fight for what's right. Marcus's heart raced. West Ridge University was one of the most prestigious schools in the country, known for its academic excellence and its chess program. I'm calling to offer you an early scholarship to attend Westbridge University once you graduate high school. Full tuition, fully funded. You've earned this, Marcus. Marcus blinked, his mouth slightly open in disbelief. Are you serious? Absolutely, Dr. Wright said warmly. Your story is powerful, and we would be honored to have you as part of our community. Tears stung the corners of Marcus's eyes as he processed the words. His mother, who had been listening nearby, put her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with joy. Marcus put the phone on speaker. Thank you so much, he said, his voice cracking slightly. This means everything. You earned it, Dr. Wright replied. We can't wait to see what you'll accomplish. Homecoming. When Marcus returned to New York, the airport terminal was quiet this time. No cameras, no crowds, just his mother waiting for him with open arms. She hugged him tightly, tears of pride streaming down her cheeks. You did it, baby, she whispered. You turned the worst day into something incredible. Marcus smiled against her shoulder, his chessboard case pressed between them. I just wanted to stand up for myself, and for everyone else. As they walked toward the exit, Marcus felt lighter than he had in days. He glanced at his phone one last time and saw a message from Jasmine. Told you you'd win. Not just the tournament, but everything. You're unstoppable. Marcus grinned, slipping his phone into his pocket as he stepped out into the warm afternoon sun. He had come through the storm stronger than ever, his voice louder than it had ever been. And this time, no one could silence him. A legacy begins, a moment to breathe. The days after Marcus's return to New York were quieter, but the ripples of his journey continued to spread. For the first time in weeks, life began to feel normal again. Marcus sat in his bedroom, his favorite chessboard laid out in front of him, the pieces perfectly arranged as if ready for a new match. The room was peaceful, the only sound the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. His championship trophy rested on the bookshelf, gleaming in the afternoon light. Above it, a picture of him and his mother sat in a small frame. It was taken years ago, back when they had less and dreamed of more, before chess became the bridge between struggle and opportunity. Marcus looked at the board, his fingers lightly tracing the black knight. He had always loved this piece, the way it moved uniquely, bending the rules of linear motion to outsmart opponents. It reminded him of himself, quiet, unpredictable, and determined. The events of the past week, being humiliated, finding courage, winning the tournament, and earning a scholarship, still felt surreal. How could so much change in such a short time? His name, his story, and his voice had traveled farther than he ever imagined. People called him an inspiration. Yet deep down, he was still the same Marcus Fields, a kid who loved chess and wanted to make his mother proud. A visit to his school. When Marcus returned to school, he wasn't prepared for the reception waiting for him. As he walked through the front doors of Hamilton Middle School, the hallway erupted with cheers. His classmates crowded around, clapping and shouting his name. Marcus, you're a hero, man. Dude, you're famous now. Sign my notebook, champ. Marcus blushed, feeling overwhelmed as his friends patted him on the back. Even the teachers smiled proudly as they watched him walk down the hall. When Marcus entered his homeroom, his teacher, Miss Thompson, clapped her hands for attention. Quiet down, everyone. Let's congratulate Marcus properly. The room went still as Miss Thompson turned toward him, her eyes kind. Marcus, we all followed your story. You stood up when it wasn't easy, and we couldn't be prouder of you. You've shown all of us what bravery looks like. She gestured toward the whiteboard, where someone had written in big letters, "Welcome home, Marcus." Marcus smiled shyly, his heart swelling as his classmates erupted in applause again. He took his seat at the back of the room, where his friend Jordan leaned in with a grin. "You're basically a legend now," Jordan said. "They should rename the school after you." Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. "Nah, I'm just glad it's over." Jordan gave him a knowing look. "It's not over, though. People are still talking about what you did. My mom says you gave people hope." Marcus looked at his friend, realizing the truth in his words. This wasn't just a moment in time. It was the start of something bigger. He wasn't just a chess player anymore. He had become a voice for fairness and resilience. The scholarship celebration. Later that week, Westbridge University officially announced Marcus's scholarship during a ceremony held at a local community center. The small auditorium was packed with students, chess enthusiasts, and members of the community who had come to celebrate Marcus's victory, not just on the chessboard, but in life. Dr. Evelyn Wright, the president of Westbridge, stood at the podium as Marcus and his mother sat in the front row. "Today, we honor a young man whose strength and determination have inspired people across the country," Dr. Wright began, her voice ringing clear. "Marcus Fields has demonstrated not only extraordinary talent, but also courage in the face of adversity. It is my great privilege to award him a full scholarship to Westbridge University." Applause thundered through the room as Marcus walked to the stage, shaking Dr. Wright's hand. Cameras flashed, and his mother wiped tears from her eyes as she beamed with pride. When Marcus was handed the microphone, his palms grew damp. Public speaking still made him nervous, but he thought of all the people watching, the ones who had rallied behind him, and the kids who might one day face the same challenges he had. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. "Thank you to everyone who supported me. I never thought something so unfair would turn into something so big, but it showed me how powerful our voices can be. I want other kids, anyone who feels small or overlooked, to know that their voices matter too. Even if it feels like no one's listening, keep standing up for yourself. Keep fighting. Change happens when we refuse to stay quiet." The room erupted in applause as Marcus stepped down from the stage, feeling lighter than ever before. Chess Club surprise. A few days later, Marcus returned to his old after-school chess club, the small basement room where his journey had begun. The tables were still cluttered with mismatched boards and chipped pieces, and the air smelled faintly of dust and old books. It felt like home. "Marcus," one of the younger kids shouted, running up to him. "You're back." The club erupted with excitement as Marcus sat down to play a few rounds with the kids. They asked him endless questions about the championship, the tournament, and his viral story. "What's it like being famous?" one boy asked. Marcus laughed. "It's not as cool as you think. I still have to do my homework." "But you beat everyone." A girl chimed in. "How do you do it?" Marcus looked at the small group of kids, all of them eager and wide-eyed, and smiled. "Chess is about patience," he said. "It's about thinking ahead, staying calm, and believing you can win, even when things look bad. That's true for life, too. No matter how tough it gets, you have to believe in yourself." The kids nodded, soaking in his words like sponges. As Marcus helped them work through their games, he realized how much this little club meant to him. This was where he had learned to fight, not with words or fists, but with quiet, determined strategy. A future to build. That night, Marcus sat at his desk, writing in his notebook. He had been sketching out new chess strategies, but now he paused, flipping to a blank page. At the top, he wrote, "My goals: win the National Youth Chess Championship again. Help kids learn chess and believe in themselves. Graduate from Westbridge University with honors. Speak out against injustice whenever I see it." He underlined the last one, pressing the pen down firmly. That was the most important lesson he had learned. His voice mattered, and he would never let it be silenced again. A legacy of change. Months later, Marcus watched as airlines across the country rolled out anti-bias training programs for their staff. News outlets reported on the changes, citing Marcus Fields as the catalyst for the reforms. The story of the 14-year-old chess prodigy who stood up to injustice became more than just a headline. It became a movement. Schools used his journey as a lesson in resilience and courage, and communities rallied around the idea that no one should ever be made to feel small. In the years to come, Marcus would continue to play chess, study hard, and inspire countless others with his story. But more importantly, he would never forget where it all started. On a plane, in seat 12A, with nothing but a chessboard and the belief that he was worth fighting for.